There was a time where A Nightmare on Elm Street and Freddy Krueger ruled the world. Nobody could touch the franchise, nobody could touch the character. But then things went wrong, and Freddy was never viewed the same way. So where exactly did A Nightmare on Elm Street go wrong? Hey, what's up everybody? Nick here, and today I want to talk to you guys about something different. A Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, I've seen your guys' comments. You all have responded to those what went wrong and what went right videos for the Halloween franchise like nobody's business. They've grown the channel tremendously, and each one has gotten no less than 1,000 views, which for a modest channel like mine, that's pretty killer, so I want to just shout you guys out, and thank you for supporting that series. A common thread that I was finding when making those videos was people were saying, wow, I love this series. Can you do this for another horror franchise? Can you talk about other horror movies with this? And I said, yeah, don't worry. I've got ideas percolating in my mind. So today I want to unleash one of those, and that is specifically talking about A Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, when I pose the question, where did A Nightmare on Elm Street go wrong? I'm not specifically talking about the original movie. No, I'm talking about the franchise as a whole. And this is a really interesting question, because if you talk to an Elm Street fan, or really just any horror fan, a lot of them will give you a different answer for where they think the franchise went wrong. For example, there are some people that think the franchise went wrong as early as Freddy's Revenge, saying that completely deviating from the first film and kind of restarting just didn't make a lot of sense. They should have followed up the story threads from the first movie. Some people will tell you Dream Master is where it went wrong, because Dream Master was a movie that killed all of the remaining Dream Warriors in the first act of the movie, and Freddy really became MTV Freddy, where he was a lot more over the top. Some people will tell you that Dream Child is where the franchise went wrong, because that was the first movie in the franchise that really tried to say something deeper and tackle some themes that the series hadn't touched up to that point. And it was a rush production, so it was kind of just haphazardly done at best. Some people would tell you New Nightmare is where the franchise lost its way, because that was the first time we didn't really have Freddy Krueger. No, it was an entity. Wes Craven got a little big for his britches and definitely wanted to get a little meta before meta was cool, to mixed results. And then some people would defend every movie in the series up until the remake and say that's what killed the series. The remake was the final nail in the coffin for A Nightmare on Elm Street and Freddy Krueger. If any one of those is the moment where the franchise went wrong for you, I can totally respect that, because again, this is really just about your opinion. But no, I don't think that's where the franchise went wrong. I think A Nightmare on Elm Street was humming along until Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare was released into theaters. And there are a lot of reasons for this. Look, after The Dream Child came out, New Line looked at the box office returns and they said, oh no, we're starting to fall, so maybe we need to kill this thing altogether. Which is kind of wild, because The Dream Child made like 3 times its budget back, so it was definitely profitable. But furthermore, in comparison, it outgrossed every Halloween movie in the 1980s except Halloween 2. So it's not like The Dream Child was a flop. It wasn't. It made money. It was successful. But it was a precipitous drop from Dream Warriors and Dream Master. The New Line looked at that and said, okay, we gotta end this thing. Freddy Krueger has to die. So what did they do? They went to work on Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, which they were going to market as the Final Nightmare on Elm Street movie, and they were going to try to give a conclusive ending. And in doing so, they took a lot of big swings with this movie, which, in my opinion, you should never do in a film that's supposed to be the end of all of it. Now let's be real, this was never going to be the end of Freddy Krueger. But why do I think that this one, personally, is the one that killed the franchise, especially when it made more money than The Dream Child? Well, there's a few reasons for that. First and foremost, when you sell this as the end, a lot of people are expecting it to be the end. So if you come back and make another movie just a few years later, a lot of people are going to be out on it. That's just kind of mismarketing your movie. You're lying to your audience. Let's be real. We talked about this over the last couple years, that if Halloween would have come back a year or two after Halloween Ends, a lot of people would have been confused because you marketed that as the end. And when you call something the final or call it the end, it doesn't necessarily have to be, but you have to give some breathing room. So it's no surprise surprised that when New Nightmare came out, nobody went and saw it, because a lot of people had pretty much sold their stock in Freddy Krueger after Freddy's dead. To add insult to injury, they did a whole promotional tour about this being the end of Freddy Krueger. They had a freaking funeral for the character of Freddy Krueger. New Line Cinema was saying, this is it, we're done. But it goes deeper than that. See, it's what Freddy's Dead decided to do in its film that I think really started the end for Freddy Krueger. And we talked about earlier the Dream Master and the Dream Child, how they did take some swings and they didn't always land. But again, those movies were insanely profitable, and I don't think that a lot of people were out on the character of Freddy Krueger yet, especially given the fact that Part 6 made more than Part 5. Look, the Dream Master definitely leaned more into the MTV Freddy, but at the time that's what people wanted. So by doing that, they actually increased interest in the character and made even more money. The Dream Child is a so-so movie, but it has incredible ideas, and if they had just taken the time to really perfect this script and just give a few more months of production with this film, it could have been a really polished product. And I actually shudder to think what the film could have been. Shudder in a good way, because there's a lot of really good stuff in here. But it feels like a direct continuation from Part 4. It doesn't really feel like a deviation from what we had seen up to that point. No, it was Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare that was like, what if we just say screw it and throw everything at the wall and see what sticks? Because in the sequels up to that point, Freddy Krueger still had his serious moments. Freddy Krueger still had his dark moments. Freddy Krueger still had his scary moments. I am going to say right now, I don't think there's anything scary about the character of Freddy Krueger in Freddy's Dead. Now, some people might say that's the point. But again, that's a problem, because 5 movies up to this point, this character was scary, and now he's just not at all. They went full Looney Tunes. They went full slapstick, Three Stooges, whatever you want to call it. That's exactly what Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare tried to do. In the first few minutes of the movie, you know what experience you're getting when you have the insanely memorable and incredible quote,
"I'll get you, my pretty, and your little soul, too!"
Now that is just the movie announcing what it's going to be, so you know what you're getting yourself in for as soon as this thing starts. Look, Freddy Krueger is only cracking jokes in this movie. He's playing video games, he's setting up gags for people, he's hardly killing anyone. It's just not Freddy Krueger in any way. Up to this point, we had not seen this character go this far off the deep end. And I think that was really the first major nail in the coffin, simply because up to this point, as I said, you could find yourself scared of Freddy at one point or another in every movie. But in this one, no, there's nothing there. On top of that, as I said earlier, this was a movie that wanted to tie up loose ends because it was going to be the last one. But really, I would say that it just created loose ends that weren't actually there. Now Freddy Krueger has a daughter, and she has to be the one to vanquish him. Now Freddy Krueger lived in Nancy's house before Nancy lived there. Why? Freddy's Dead was kind of trying to expand this world more, which is a super weird decision in what's supposed to be your last movie. It's even more weird when you think about how almost none of this was set up at all. So many things that they address in this movie, or they reveal in this movie, are things that we have no idea where it came from. Look, I'm a Halloween fan, so far be it from me to try to trash another movie for creating familial connections or giving reasons 5 or 6 movies into their series, okay? I'm used to that. However, I don't really like that particularly in Halloween either, and I've made videos about that. Because I feel like when you start to strip down the mystique of these characters, it just makes them far less interesting. When you're giving answers and you're giving kryptonite, essentially, oh, this is what can defeat this character, well, I'm less interested. I'm not scared. And it also doesn't help that Freddy Krueger only has a handful of kills in this movie, and they're all goofy as shit. So not only does he not have any terrifying dream sequences or the mystique that he had up to this point, no, when we do see him killing, the very few times we do in this movie, it's literally for jokes. Like, it's for fun, it's yay! Now, I don't fault director Rachel Talalay because she was given an unenviable task to tie up this franchise, to give it a satisfying ending so abruptly, and to answer a bunch of questions that were never asked in the first place. That's not really fair to her. But to that point, I will then say, as somebody that was a part of this franchise from the beginning, she should have understood the character of Freddy Krueger more, because what is on the screen here doesn't feel like, doesn't look like, and it just is not at all in the spirit of the Freddy Krueger we had come to know and love. Now, as I said, this movie made more than The Dream Child, so if you looked at it purely just off of receipts, you would say, oh, well, A Nightmare on Elm Street was back, right? No, absolutely not. This movie was trashed by the public. Fans hated it, critics hated it. Nobody liked this movie. It came and it went like a fart in the wind. And then, New Line wanting to bring Freddy Krueger back, they went back to Wes Craven. They were like, we need to bring this franchise back because this was our cash cow. This is the house that Freddy built. So bring back the OG director and give us a fresh new take. The problem is, it was just a couple years after Freddy's dead. It wasn't your prototypical Nightmare on Elm Street movie. Nobody cared. Nobody went and saw it because nobody liked Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. Now, I'm sure somebody's watching this right now and they're like, well, I like Freddy's Dead. You know what I mean? Like general public. It's like me with Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. Yeah, I love that movie, but when that came out, it was like 80-20. 80% of people hated that movie. The point is that public interest had waned in Freddy Krueger after this film came out. It was because of what they did to the character. It was because of the film itself. It was because of what they marketed the film as. It was just all of those reasons rolled into one that really was the final nail in the coffin for A Nightmare on Elm Street truly losing its way. Now, I am someone that likes New Nightmare, so I would say that they kind of brought it back to form in a lot of ways with New Nightmare. But for those who don't like it, I get it, because that's not Freddy Krueger. That's not A Nightmare on Elm Street. So if you say, I don't really care for that movie because it's not a good Nightmare on Elm Street movie, I can't necessarily argue with you. That's not to say that Freddy's Dead killed the franchise forever, because it didn't. Of course, a decade later, Freddy vs. Jason would come out and make a ton of money, and everybody was in on these characters again. We would get a Nightmare on Elm Street remake, we would get a Friday the 13th remake. Both were insanely profitable at the box office, and it looked like the prospects for these franchises were bright. Now, unfortunately, Friday the 13th got marred in legal controversy, and A Nightmare on Elm Street got absolutely trashed by damn near everybody, and it came and went. So it kind of makes me wonder, if Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare had not been what it was, where would Freddy Krueger be today? Because I do think it's mostly inarguable that that's really where the franchise went wrong for a lot of reasons. And if that movie had been good and had been well received, what could A Nightmare on Elm Street have become? New Nightmare doesn't happen. They probably make a part 7 and a part 8 following stories of the characters from these movies that survived. We wouldn't have to reset and get meta. We wouldn't have to necessarily pit the two against each other yet. I mean, Friday the 13th did that. They pumped out a couple movies in the intermediary there because Freddy vs. Jason just wasn't coming to fruition yet, and they wanted to make money because their franchise was still profitable. A Nightmare on Elm Street could have been that too, but it lost its way. And I think where it lost its way was Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. And that's not to say that if you guys are fans of that movie, that you're wrong and that you shouldn't like this movie. Absolutely not. Look, I don't know if you guys know this. I like some bad movies. I know, crazy, right? But I want to know what you guys think. Do you think Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare was the movie that really changed the public perception of Freddy Krueger for years to come? Do you think that that was the movie that really derailed whatever momentum the franchise had? Freddy Krueger is, of course, still on the Mount Rushmore when it comes to horror's iconic villains and franchises. So it's not like it ruined the series, but it just makes you think, what if? But I want to hear you guys discuss it down in the comment section below with me. Give me your thoughts. I want to know what you guys think. Am I right or am I wrong here? Do you think there was a different point in this franchise where it really lost its way? And if so, why? Whatever it is, sound off in the comment section below. I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to leave a like on it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. This is Nick at the Lost River Drive-In, and I'm pulling out.